Welcome to the Getting High on Leadership series featuring Paul Karasik. Paul is one of America's top management consultants helping leaders succeed. He is the author of 9 books, including Sweet Persuasion and Brilliant Thoughts and Provocative Questions. His insights appear regularly in major publications, and he is one of the most sought-after executive coaches. Paul founded the American Seminar Leaders Association and the Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles. He is a popular speaker at national conferences and has been on stages across all 50 states and internationally. Paul's work addresses the question, how can we transform conflict in business into collaboration? With decades of experience in management, leadership, and psychedelics, he brings a unique perspective on personal and societal growth. In this series, we'll be discussing his latest book, Getting High on Leadership, The Leader's Guide to Higher Consciousness. We'll be exploring the concepts, techniques, and mindset required to revolutionize leadership. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this series. My name is Sanchez, your host, and we are joined by the author of Getting High on Leadership, Paul Karasik. Paul and I are taking some time to step through his book section by section with conscious leadership in mind and expanding on those chapters to hopefully provide some guidelines and some tips, an occasional technique if we're lucky, and many more bits of wisdom along the way. Paul, this one is probably worth a double or triple length episode. We'll do our best to rein it in, of course, but unconditional forgiveness. Man, there's many places to jump in there, but where would you like to start unrolling that red carpet?
Well, let's just talk about the everyday life of a leader, and the leader usually begins doing everything. That's if you have a company, you have a group, it tends to be what a leader does. And then as the leader grows or the group grows or the initiative grows, they begin to hire a team around them or engage a team, not necessarily hire, but engage a team around them of where things now have to be compartmentalized, right? So somebody doing social media or media in general, somebody else doing whatever.
Time to delegate.
And most leaders they're pretty talented. They're multi-talented. I believe in the Renaissance man philosophy, which is we all have multiple talents and there's no need to be stuck on one. We see that in the arts with artists like Sting and Joni Mitchell, who are great artists in painting and so on, but also are, that talent is not just limited to one particular thing. And then we have the same in leadership. They hand it off. I guess for an example for me would be like writing copy. And it's, study and application and so on and so forth. When I give it to somebody else, it's never as good as mine. It's never as good. And that's where forgiveness, unconditional forgiveness, it's that accepting that it may not be as good. It may be better, by the way. I'm not saying it's always worse, but the fact is people make mistakes. And you've got to have a way to deal with it. And it's not to make them wrong or bad or punish them, but to forgive them. If they're really on board and their intentions were really right, how can you be angry with them? I mean, really.
And that gets so hard too, because a leader has delegated this work now, and then there's something happened, something went wrong. Of course, there's ego involved, but there's also the pure logic of like not meeting a deadline or getting something incorrect. So there's a whole lot of emotion that gets boiled up in those situations, and I've seen companies kind of get sidetracked trying to discipline or trying to say like, we need to have extra phone calls, or you should stay late. We got to talk about this, or like, what do you think about this? And it's just the more they dig, sometimes the more obvious it feels is just like, just forgive the guy. Because if you're not going to fire him, you clearly already have forgiven him. So let's try to just move on. We still need him to be productive. Still need to move as a company. But it's hard to say that without a leader thinking that you're belittling maybe the problem or you're belittling the concern. that's where, hopefully as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to come to this already, trying to reduce your own ego, not letting it kind of want to try to enact order and law, right? That's what the ego
Yeah, it
comes
doesn't
in trying
work.
to
Yeah.
do.
It doesn't work. If I told the story before, forgive me, but the Tom Watson story where the guy makes a huge mistake, he's the founder of IBM. At the time, IBM was king of tech. I mean, beyond anybody, and there was nobody else practically. A couple of other companies. Guy makes a multi-million-dollar error, and they walk into Watson's office and say, "Hey, did you fire the guy?" He says, "Not after what he cost me. Why would I fire him? Now I'm going to keep him on board forever. He
Yeah,
cost
you
me
just
$2 million.
invested.
I'm not going to fire him." And I think that's the way we have to look at it, through a Tom Watson kind of eyes. And
Yeah, it does strengthen the
my
bonds,
secretary
right?
made a mistake on my taxes one year. It cost me, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000.
Right,
And I'm
right.
like, what? Like, why
Of
did you
course,
put?
there's emotion. Yeah.
Oh my God, But then a couple things happen. Number one, how many times has she saved me money? My assistant, my executive assistant.
Mhm.
Uh, I can't even count them.
Right. To really balance it out, you still have a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful assistant. And
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I'm like, at one point, I'm like, wow, especially giving money to the IRS. I mean, it's one mistaking to a vendor or something, but like, I'm giving it to the
You have to pay the man.
government, and I didn't
Yeah.
have to do that, And the other point here is, who the hell am I to stand on a high horse to criticize that person when I make mistakes every single day,
Yeah. No,
and
that's
beg for forgiveness, Maybe not every day, but quite often. We're all human, um,
that to
whatever it is. So who am I? What kind of ego trip am I on to think that this person on the team, or anybody I'm leading, whatever the case may be, is somehow less than me?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
or doesn't deserve the same forgiveness that you expect
Yeah,
from
yeah,
it in the other
and that's
situations.
and I think probably at the core of this, I don't think I mentioned it in this little chapter. It's actually one of the longer chapters in the book. Uh, but it comes back to that golden rule. Not the golden rule, but it comes back to what it says in the New Testament, which is, forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us.
It's
Like,
been
oh,
said
you
for
what?
centuries. It's been said
That's
for
such. I love that truth. That's like an
yeah,
immutable deal. Like, you're going to get forgiven by other people, and hey, that's great. I mean, just last week I made a huge error, and somebody felt bad about it, and it was a mistake, and it was a real mistake, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
never would want to hurt this person, but I wasn't thinking correctly, and I went to him and said, I really want to apologize, and that was unwarranted, um, and he was cool. He was cool, and I think part of it is the fact that I'm learning to forgive real easily. Just let it
Right.
go. Just let it go. The more time, like you were saying, the more time you spend on that crap, it's just like throwing good money after bad. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Or
like the error. Let's move on. Boom. Let's do it.
yeah. And
Let's.
it's not maybe meant to belittle the problem. It's still a problem, right? To have made a mistake. Obviously, there's some things we can do better. There's room for improvement. But if we
Mm-hmm.
spend forever disciplining, we're not improving. From a business sense, from a life sense, you're wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
You only have so much, you know?
And the other element in this is accountability. When everybody's taking accountability for their own action, you don't have to punish them. They'll punish themselves.
Yeah,
You
they
know, I've
already
been
feel bad.
yeah. My error last week. It's I have to forgive myself. I have to say, hey, you're human, man. You made a bad judgment call on that, and
Yeah.
just let it go. Just let it go, because you could ruminate on that and relive that forever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really about finding your way to forgiveness quick with others in the conflict. But then if we use some of the lessons we've talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
in order to forgive quickly everyone else, you need to make sure that you're forgiving yourself
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
you are actually automatically and unconditionally forgiving those things that you did and not ruminating long term. And then I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really the technique in this one. We've joked throughout this series now that I'm trying to pull these techniques out, but I think you're always trying to show us the abstract, the truth of it that's beyond the technique. So I think this one is maybe a
Exactly.
little bit of both. The technique is that internal forgiveness, which takes time,
Yeah,
awareness, and ultimately
it's right.
consciousness, right?
It does take time. It does take time, and but that time of forgiveness, once you get into that consciousness, it becomes it becomes much easier.
Yeah, because if you're living within that internally, it
Mm-hmm.
suddenly feels more natural to express that outward, and treat other people that way. So I think
Yeah,
it does bring a point back where you mentioned that if someone does something that offends you, you try to look at it with compassion or try to look at beyond that
mm-hmm.
act. See this person as an individual. This was once a baby, right? This was a
Mm-hmm.
this was a child too.
Yeah.
That some things happen in life or in their day or in their work
Mm-hmm.
or career that made this conflict. So whoever can try to drop that first is the true victor. But there's no win until everyone's on the same page there, which can be difficult with certain mindsets and certain conflicts.
Well, usually because it becomes difficult if the intentions weren't there. That's what really
Hmm.
frustrates the leader. Like you just didn't, like we said in previous chapters, you just didn't care, and that's why you made the mistake.
Yes.
That's when that kind of mistake you really have to look at with a different lens than the loyal member of the team. It's a totally different thing. That now you have to kind of get into it with that
Right.
because again, consciousness rules actions, not the other way around. So it
So if your intentions really weren't right, the consciousness is off, or you're not
it's
aligned
it's
with the
it's
leadership.
off. You're treating them like a thing, to fulfill your needs in the situation. They feel it. They resent it, and harmony's lost. That's what happens. So, um, again, the bad news is always in this series. It all begins with us, and it all
Yeah.
begins with consciousness. And in every situation, we have to be aware of that, be monitoring that, and then it becomes much easier. It really does. I mean, a lot of this stuff becomes effortless that we're talking about
Because
as
you've
you as it
kind of
comes
brought
out.
it internally and habitualized it, right?
Hmm. I was working with a graphic designer about a month ago, and he was a young guy, and he didn't know the software, and I found myself just like, mm, you know, um, and I'd ask him for one thing, and he'd send me back the next, something different, and he'd ask me for my comments, but then he wouldn't implement them. But the truth was, he was totally on board, and I just had to keep monitoring myself. Like, Paul, what are you expecting from this person to be perfect? Like, that's outrageous. Just keep working with them, and
Right.
because his
I've seen
intentions were perfect. He wanted, he was on board and everything else, and so when that consciousness was there, I let go of the other stuff, and he did a beautiful job, and
right.
I'm still engaged with him. I said after we're done, I'm not going to do it, but like he came through, and maybe I need to stay with him just to keep learning that lesson of patience, acceptance, and that's where we grow. Um, I believe that business can be the arena for our own personal growth of consciousness
It
when
doesn't have to
it's
be
viewed
completely
from that
separated.
lens. Yeah,
Right.
it's not a separation. Oh, I work here and then I work on myself over here. No, 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 that's not it at all. It's the work here is the work here. If you connect the two dots.
Yes, and I think that's a really good point to make. You know, throughout the series, we've talked about leadership within family, within like community events or organizations, within work, and we've tried to, you know, provide different scenarios and analogies in those levels of leadership.
Yep.
But I think the crux of it, the takeaway point there is that it's all still that consciousness. You're at the center. So no matter which tiers you're leading at, it is that internal work that's going to move the needle.
Do you ever notice when you're in a good mood, everybody's in a good mood?
Something about that, right? Something's going on with that.
Yeah, you know,
like the universe is watching.
The bus driver's in a good mood. The person at the 7-Eleven's in a good mood. Your cleaner's in a good mood. Like when you pop in, hey, what's happening? Like, hey, I'm good. You know, like it seems to be that way, and that's really, you know, it's finding that when mistakes are made, just to maintain that good mood, you know, and that's the core takeaway from here. And if the person's really cares and it was just mistakes, and he's putting in the energy, then you have to work with them. And that we're going to get into that in the final section pretty shortly about helping to grow people.
Wonderful.
And we'll expand on that shortly.
Yeah, great. No, thank you for the thoughts here, Paul, and the insight on this section of yours. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for following this journey so far and continuing on the path. Join us for the next episode, or feel free to start from the beginning. Grab a link to the book in the show notes below, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Getting High on Leadership series. If you have any questions, you can comment below or send them in via email to paul@paulkarasik.com. Follow him on Instagram at PK_the conversation. Find out more at wholesalerinstitute.com and psychedelic-awakening.com. The Getting High on Leadership series is produced by Rob Sanchez and Apartment 113, which can be found at apartment113.com and followed on Instagram at APT_113.